You know, it feels like the full-service restaurant scene has had a pretty rough go of it lately.
Yeah, definitely some headwinds there.
But there are these two steakhouses, Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn Steakhouse, that seem to be, well, really taking off, not just getting by.
It's quite something, isn't it? They're really bucking the trend.
Makes you wonder, okay, what's going on there? What's their approach?
Well, the numbers alone are pretty striking. If you look at, say, 2019 to 2024, Texas Roadhouse, sales jumped over 55%.
55%? Wow.
Yeah. And LongHorn Steakhouse, even more dramatic. We're talking an increase of more than 80%.
80 in this climate.
Exactly. That kind of growth, I mean, it definitely warrants a closer look, you know?
Absolutely. And maybe before we dive too deep, if you're finding this kind of analysis interesting, do think about hitting that like and subscribe button. It really helps us out.
Good point. Yeah, definitely appreciate the support.
So back to the numbers. There was also that big shift, wasn't there, in 2024?
Oh, right. Yeah, Texas Roadhouse actually overtook Olive Garden.
Became the largest casual dining restaurant in the U.S.
Yep, pushed Olive Garden off the top spot, which they'd held since, what, 2018?
That's a real shakeup. I mean, Olive Garden was synonymous with casual dining leader for a while there.
It truly is. It just shows, I think, that these two steakhouse brands, Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn, they've really tapped into something consumers want right now.
Okay, so that brings us to the core questions, right?
Yeah.
What is that something? What's the secret sauce, if you will?
Exactly. What keeps pulling people into these specific places? And importantly, how are they managing to stand out from the crowd?
And maybe we should touch on the parent company for LongHorn, too, Jardin Restaurants.
Yeah.
Their performance has been pretty notable.
Oh, absolutely. Darden stock, I mean, it's significantly outperformed the S&P 500 over the last 5 years.
And while they've got other big names, Olive Garden obviously, LongHorn is a huge part of that success story.
It is. And crucially, it's their fastest growing brand, which is saying something.
So what does that tell us? Is it just about steak?
Well, steak definitely has this enduring appeal, doesn't it? For a lot of people, it still signifies, you know, a special occasion, maybe a bit of a splurge, a more premium meal.
Right.
And LongHorn's consistently strong performance really underlines that. Investors looking at Darden's reports, they're definitely paying close attention to how LongHorn is doing.
If we drill down a bit more on LongHorn specifically, they've generally shown really strong same-store sales growth, haven't they, compared to Darden's other places?
Consistently, yes, quarter after quarter.
Now, there was, I think, one recent quarter, maybe fiscal 25, where the growth was around, what, 2.5%, which was maybe a touch below what analysts hoped for.
That's right. A slight miss on expectations, perhaps?
But even so, in the context of the overall market, LongHorn was still a bright spot within the Darden portfolio, right?
Absolutely. It suggests there's this real underlying strength. I mean, seeing any positive same-store sales in the current environment is pretty good.
Especially when you compare it.
Exactly. While that specific quarter might not have been, you know, the best news overall for Darden, the fact that LongHorn still managed positive comps, meaning existing stores made more money year over year, that speaks volumes about their resilience.
And how does that stack up against, say, Olive Garden within Darden?
Well, Olive Garden's performance has been a bit more, let's say, stable, maybe flatter, and some of Darden's fine dining brands, they've definitely faced steeper challenges recently.
So, okay, steak feels premium, but somehow Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn have made it accessible. Is that fair?
I think that's a huge part of it. Experts really point to this focus on delivering good value for money. That seems to be a major driver of their success.
But it's got to be more than just the price on a menu, right? Value isn't just cheap.
Oh, absolutely not. Value encompasses the whole experience. Both chains seem to really get that.
How so? What are they doing?
Well, for LongHorn, one aspect seems to be their portion sizes. They're known for being pretty generous.
Right, so you feel like you're getting a substantial meal for your money.
Exactly. That perception of abundance is part of the value equation.
And what about Texas Roadhouse? What's their angle on value and experience?
For Texas Roadhouse, a lot of talk centers around their internal culture. They've really built something strong there.
I heard about their managers, the general managers. They can actually earn a slice of the profits from their own store.
That's right, a percentage of the store's profits. And that is a hugely important factor. You really can't overstate it.
Why is that so impactful?
Because you're investing directly in those local leaders, the GMs. They're the ones on the ground, making sure the customer experience is great, making sure operations run smoothly day to day.
So it gives them real ownership.
Precisely. Texas Roadhouse, and it seems LongHorn too, they appear very skilled at developing and, importantly, empowering leadership right there at the restaurant level. They trust their managers.
Okay, let's try and quantify this value thing. Someone did a comparison, right? Cooking steak at home versus eating out.
Yeah, CNBC looked into this. Near their studio, they found an uncooked, say, 20-ounce ribeye at the grocery store cost around $22.
Okay, $22 for the raw steak.
Then they checked a Texas Roadhouse nearby. Same kind of steak, a 20-ounce ribeye cooked for you.
How much more was it?
Only about $9 more, so around $31. And crucially, that included 2 side dishes.
Huh. So for $9 extra, you get it cooked, probably correctly, plus sides, and no cleanup.
Exactly. When you frame it like that, the price difference feels relatively small, doesn't it? Especially factoring in the convenience, the saved effort.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And this small gap, this perceived value, has been a real advantage for these steakhouses, particularly when food costs, especially beef, have been volatile or rising.
You mean people get nervous about cooking an expensive steak themselves?
There's definitely something to that. Some analysts call it meat anxiety. You hesitate to drop $22 on a steak at the grocery store worried you might mess it up.
Right. Whereas going to Texas Roadhouse or LongHorn feels reliable, less risky.
Exactly. It's a hassle-free, reliable experience where you'll get a decent steak cooked the way you want it.
Okay, but the price of beef does fluctuate. That must be a massive headache for a steakhouse. How do they handle that volatility?
Well, they have to be proactive. A key strategy, especially for chains of this size, is locking in contracts for their meat and other key supplies way in advance.
So they negotiate prices for beef, potatoes, drinks, everything, months or even longer before they need it.
That's the idea. Their big purchasing departments negotiate these deals for beef, beverages, sides, alcohol, you name it.
And that gives the restaurant managers stability.
Precisely. The GMs can then operate with more predictable food costs based on these pre-agreed rates, rather than being subject to the daily whims of the market.
That sounds like a significant advantage over, say, a smaller independent place that can't buy in that kind of bulk or that far ahead.
It absolutely is. Now, there's a potential downside, of course. If market prices plummet unexpectedly, they might be stuck paying a higher contracted rate.
Sure, there's risk.
But overall, this strategy provides crucial stability. It lets the operators focus on running the restaurant, managing staff, ensuring quality, rather than constantly worrying about the price of beef next week.
And beyond just locking in costs, are they doing anything else on the pricing front?
Yes. Another key aspect seems to be deliberately keeping their menu price increases below the general rate of inflation. They're trying to absorb some of those cost hits themselves.
Really? How does that work?
Well, for instance, Texas Roadhouse reported, I think, in a recent quarter that their menu prices were up just over 2% compared to the previous year.
Okay, 2%.
But at the same time, they were expecting their own costs, their commodity costs for the whole year, to rise by maybe 3 to 4%.
So they're intentionally letting their margins get squeezed a bit on the main item.
It appears so. By absorbing some of that inflation, the goal is to maintain their appeal, keep that value perception strong for the customer.
And the thinking is, if they keep prices looking reasonable, more people will come in.
Exactly. More foot traffic.
And maybe those customers, once they're in the door, will spend a bit more on extras, like appetizers, desserts, maybe another drink.
That's generally the strategy. Those add-on items often have much higher profit margins anyway, so keep the headline steak price attractive, get them in, and encourage incremental spending. It's a smart way to manage overall expenses and drive total revenue.
Okay, so it sounds like a solid formula, but just being a sort of budget-friendlier steakhouse isn't the whole story, is it? Because look at Outback Steakhouse.
Right. Outback is a really interesting comparison here. They actually have more locations than either Texas Roadhouse or LongHorn.
More restaurants.
But they generate less revenue per restaurant. And significantly, they've actually been seeing customer traffic decline, fewer people walking through their doors.
Huh. So more stores, less money per store, fewer customers lately. What's going on there? What are the potential reasons for that difference compared to Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn?
Well, there seem to be several factors potentially at play. Reports suggest Outback has been actively working on, let's say, improving its in-restaurant operations and also refining its menu.
Okay. Operational tweaks. Anything else?
There are also structural differences. Business models. Outback relies much more heavily on franchising.
More franchisees compared to the others.
Yes, a much higher percentage of franchise locations compared to LongHorn and Texas Roadhouse, which tend to have more company-owned stores.
And why does that matter? Isn't franchising pretty common?
It is very common, especially right now in the restaurant world, but the company-owned model, arguably, can offer more direct control over consistency, standards, quality, which might be particularly important for a steak concept where execution is key.
Makes sense. Consistency is tough with lots of different LongHorn owners. What about the customer experience itself at Outback?
Well, two things often come up: the average check size and the menu complexity. Outback's average bill per customer tends to be higher than its main competitors.
So it costs more to eat there, on average.
Generally, yes. And historically, their menu had become quite large, quite extensive.
Lots of choices.
Yeah, maybe too many. They actually announced recently they were cutting a significant number of items from the menu.
Which suggests they realized,
Right.
what, need to simplify.
Exactly. It suggests a recognition that maybe they needed to refocus, do fewer things, but do them really, really well. That seems to be a lesson here. Simplify and execute flawlessly on the core offerings.
And how has this played out for Outback's parent company?
Well, Bloomin' Brands, which owns Outback, saw its stock price take a hit after they released a future financial outlook that, frankly, didn't meet market expectations. It really highlights the challenges they're navigating right now.
So, okay, pulling it all together then.
Yeah.
When we look at the success of Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn, it seems to boil down to a few key elements.
I think that's right. It starts with the enduring appeal of steak, as a desirable meal out. People still want that experience.
But it's not just steak anywhere.
No, it's combined with a really strong focus on delivering good value for the price point, making that premium feeling meal feel accessible.
And then there's the investment inside the restaurant.
Absolutely critical. That investment in the actual in-store experience, whether it's the generous portions you see emphasized at LongHorn, or that strong employee culture and empowered local management at Texas Roadhouse.
That manager profit sharing seems like a big piece of the Texas Roadhouse puzzle.
It really does. Investing in your people, especially those GMs.
And underpinning all that are those smart, proactive strategies for managing costs.
Yeah, securing contracts in advance, strategically absorbing some inflation to keep prices attractive. That allows them to maintain the value proposition even when input costs rise.
And when you set that against the backdrop of Outback's recent struggles,
the differences become pretty stark, don't they? The franchising model differences, the check averages, the menu strategy adjustments Outback is making now.
It really highlights that formula.
Yeah, the recipe for success in this specific casual dining steakhouse space seems to be: keep it relatively simple, keep innovating where it counts, invest heavily in your people on the ground, and offer it all at a price point that consumers feel is fair and reasonable.
Sounds simple when you list it like that.
But clearly, as the Outback comparison shows, consistently executing on that formula is much harder than it sounds.
Well, it certainly seems that Texas Roadhouse and LongHorn Steakhouse have found that successful formula, or at least are executing it incredibly well right now, allowing them to really thrive. This has been really insightful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Always interesting to dig into what makes certain businesses tick.
And for all of you listening, if you found this discussion valuable, please do remember to hit like and subscribe. It helps others find the conversation.
Indeed. Until next time.
Goodbye for now.